Well, we're back again to the second hour of Folk Roots. Thanks for being out there and joining in this journey. Did you enjoy the poetic journey of the first hour? Well, we're going to continue that now in music and conversation. Did you hear The Red-Winged Blackbird is the latest release from poet Bob Jensen and composer, arranger, songwriter Annie Gallup. There are so many aspects to this simple idea that I started that there'll have to be more down the road. Don't forget, you can get in touch with us here at Folkroots at CKUA.com or Folkroots Facebook page. Did you hear The Red-Winged Blackbird is streaming now on all platforms? Next up, Annie Gallup, and then we'll be talking with Bob Jensen. We start with Simplicity, Immortality.
The portion of eternity in which Caesar will be remembered is a fleck of dust floating on the breeze. The portion of eternity in which he will be forgotten is 1,000 galaxies, times 10,000, times 1,000,000. His laurel leaves will be consumed by the earth, which will be consumed by the sun, which in the fullness of time will be consumed by everlasting darkness beyond even the gaze of God. There's no greater joke in heaven than the immortality of Caesar's laurel crown.
From Did You Hear the Red-Winged Blackbird? And that is a poem from Bob Jensen, and we have Annie Gallup completing and composing the arrangements. Bob Jensen is my guest, and Bob, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Now, let me just say that I started off the morning with David Francie. I think he's a poet, but many people would call him a lyricist. But what I love about Francie is that he puts the songs out there like pencil sketches. They're complete. The melody is there, the words are there, the emotion is there, and they go out into the world, and people fill them out with their own ideas, whether it's a folk version again or a bluegrass version. I mean, he's had so many people do his songs. As a poet, as a man who takes images and puts them into words, how does it happen that you see an image and an emotion, and what happens to create those words?
Well, I've often said that I tend to think in pictures, and I have a mind that, when I look at a cloud, if I gaze at a cloud for more than just a couple of seconds, I start to see faces and angels and dogs, and I'm always thinking in terms of images. When I write, imagery just, sort of happens automatically, and I try to convert those images in my mind into words. I used to write songs back in the old days when I was a kid, and I was going around with a guitar trying to be a folk singer. And so I have written songs in addition to poetry, but what I've found just incredibly fun is the way other artists sort of reimagine my words. That's happened on this record with Annie Gallup on pretty much all of the tracks. I was sending Annie all kinds of poems, and there was one poem that I thought, well, I don't know if this is one of my best works, but I'm going to send it anyway, a poem called Run For Me. And I thought, maybe that one's a bit of a throwaway, but I'll put it out there anyway, and we'll see, what she thinks. So Annie got back to me and she said, I think I'm going to do something with this Run For Me. And then she wrote a song around the lyrics with banjo and this incredible Americana feel that was completely different than anything that I had imagined, but it was absolutely perfect. And that's been one of the joys of this, is that I've always felt, as I've been working with Annie on this, that she understands exactly what it is I'm trying to say with my poems. And she might have a different way of saying it, but the message is always the same.
Poet Bob Jensen is my guest. Did you hear The Red-Winged Blackbird is the latest collection of poems into songs working with Annie Gallup. Here's Run For Me.
shaped so slightly like an ancient Roman coin that still retains its value, where the land and sky adjoin. It is the evening's dark rose, and heaven is her throne, a smoky nomad sister for the lone strawberry road. For part of me runs with you on that vast and airy sea. You dance upon the prairie waves will keep the sailor free. For the prisoner takes comfort in the progress of the moon. If flight will mend the broken wing and make wildflowers swoon, to run for me. The lullaby of lowing from the morning meadows kind, it is a kind of dirge where those pickets draw the line. But in the endless pastures that the fox and hare call home, the heart of man is free as long as you shall roam. Deny that iron bit that would bring the kestrel down, for it is a heavy metal now, keep her on the ground. Till you come to the east, for you're running to the west. Do I feel your hooves upon the ground, and in my aching chest, run for me. Run for me. Run for me. Run for me. Run for me.
Run for Me from the collection called Did You Hear the Red-Winged Blackbird? Bob Jensen is my guest. Bob, is there a goal with the poems you write?
I write because I want to share. And sometimes, it's a kind of a serious process, but there's no rule that says you can't have fun as a poet. I've found that collaborating has been fantastic. It's really fun. Not something I expected as a writer of poetry.
So when you release these words to the universe, and in this particular case, you hear Annie's interpretation. The first time you hear that song, is it like a coloring book where all of the colors are now there instead of the sketch?
That's not a bad way of saying it. In the case of Annie, she would, my God, and she's so prolific, Not only did she write the music for all of these, but she played 7 or 8 instruments, I think, every damn instrument in the book. Plus, she recorded and produced it, and she made those beautiful videos. So, an immensely talented woman. When Annie would send me a new track, I would just go, oh my God. Because I've been a huge fan of Annie's for, I think, more than 20 years now. We worked together a little bit many years ago, and that's how I discovered her through a meeting. Ray Bonneville introduced us. I've been a huge fan, absolutely love her solo work. One of the things I like about Annie is she reminds me a little bit of Kate and Anna McGarrigle, who I also worked with for many years. The thing about Kate and Anna was they kind of had their own musical language. And so you'd hear something and you'd go, geez, that was kind of interesting. And you'd play it again and you'd go, holy cow, that's really good. The more you play it, the more you realize what a great song it was. And I found that with Annie, with some of the songs, was I thought, geez, that's a really interesting take on this. I like this. And then I'd listen again and I'd get more out of it. And the longer I listened, the more I love them. And I just can't say enough about, the treatment that she's given my poems. Obviously, she put a lot of hard work into this, and there was, I think, an affection for the work. I'm just thrilled to death. And each track for me was kind of like a Christmas gift on Christmas morning. Just a wonderful surprise.
Did you hear the Red-winged Blackbird is out now on all streaming services? I'm talking with poet Bob Jensen about this release. Bob, there's this wonderful collection here that is a document of, I guess, a time for you. Did you learn something about yourself, hearing it from Annie's view? What do you know now that you didn't know before the project?
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I think in some ways I did, because like previously I was talking about this poem, Run For Me. I'm somebody who's always second guessing my own work. I think, I don't know, is that any good? And I often look at my own material, and I guess I kind of judge myself maybe a little more harshly than someone who was just casually listening. But in the case of Run For Me, as I said, I wasn't sure if that was maybe my best work, but I thought, what the heck, it has rhyme and meter. It could work as a song. And then when she sent it back to me and she reimagined it the way she did, I remember thinking, well, geez, yeah, that's not so bad after all, And so for me, it was very affirming. It was kind of validating. I thought maybe I can write songs, because of, again, this album has given me more confidence as a writer.
Well, Bob, I certainly think that it's a wonderful reimagining of your words into lyrics, and her putting it together means that the poems will last for a long time as music. And we're very fortunate to be involved with Roots Music because, quite frankly, once it's good, it lasts for a very, very long time and fits into time and space. Thanks for your time.
Well, that's our hope, is that these songs will have wings. So thanks for doing what you do, and thanks for talking to Annie and I about this really exciting project.
Safe journeys, my friend.
Okay.
The poet, Bob Jensen, on Folk Roots. On the other side of this, the composer, Annie Gallup.
Go forth into that morning and ride toward the sun, and climb your 100 apple trees before the day is done. And never count the seconds or the paths your heart will trace. Savor each sweet moment that the sun shines on your face. And when the tide is out, breathe deeply, you are free. Assume the siren soul of the wild and restless sea. And never waste a morning spent idle in your heart, for the turning of the planet seems much slower at the start. But the days of endless summer and the everlasting nights are just a cruel illusion obscured by childhood rites. And when your heart awakens and love comes to the fore, never leave those feelings standing outside the timid door. For the apple you leave hanging while you make a bashful plan will drop before the sun into another boy's keen hands. Beyond the lost afternoon, when night drops like a stone, there's one word written in your heart, and that word is alone. And if you'd see a sunrise that brings you peace of mind, above all things avoid the sting of acts that are unkind. For unkindness is a verdict for each petty schoolyard crime, and regret is but an echo that doesn't fade with time. So ride into that morning, careless, swift and free. Assume the siren soul of the wild and restless sea, and never leave an apple hanging on the bough. Love as if the only moment left is here and now. For each fallen sparrow bears a broken wing. Let kindness be the only song the world will hear you sing. So seize the day in love the way you'd have love come to you. May your kindness be as boundless as the ocean's deepest blue. May your kindness be boundless.
A poet's advice to his younger self. Annie Gallup in voice and composition there with the poems of Bob Jensen. And now from Montreal to Maine in the United States, we have Annie Gallup. Annie, how did this project start? With just Bob sending you poems?
It started last summer. I think it was maybe June we started. It's very recent. He suggested that maybe we should collaborate on a song, and he sent me a poem, which was the Pale-Eyed Minstrel Boy. And I turned it into a song, and it was so much fun and so rewarding. I went back and said, what else have you got that I could turn into a song? And it really just took on a life of its own. We never said, let's make a CD. We just kept looking for one more song. And at some point, he just opened up all of his books to me to choose from, which was quite exciting, just to dive into all of the poetry that he's written over the years. And it was really generous of him. I mean, enormously generous to just turn it over to me to do whatever I felt that he did not manage the process at all. He just waited to see what I came up with and then let me do it again. It was really fun. It was an incredibly fun process.
So I go back to the period when you released a track called Camera, and that was back in the middle part of the 90s. And I've played it over the years. Having said that, you have your own unique voice, your own unique cadence. But with the set of poems that you've put out now, it's such a wonderful pairing because your cadence and his words seem to connect so closely. Is that an easy journey? Like, do you ask the muse to visit you, or do you just freeform it? And not that any art is freeformed, but do you just put it together, like, and say, here's how the poem should go?
It was a completely different process than when I work with my own words. And it was just reading the poem until I understood what it would sound like musically and melodically. I listened to Bob's readings of his own poetry, and that was very instructive. He has a very, he's not a dramatic reader, but it's very effective. It's so understated and honest and beautiful. And I didn't want to lose that feeling, but I also wanted the melodies to be very melodic. I wanted the melody to have a message too. And I wanted the melody to match the message of the song. And it was a very different process. And I also started playing the piano, which I have never recorded piano before. But some of these songs, they just didn't work on the guitar, and the piano was just perfect for them. It was a really exciting project to work on.
Annie Gallup is my guest on Folk Roots for the Million Candles Burning, exploring piano poetry on a collection of poems called Did You Hear the Red-Winged Blackbird?
The pasture gates left open, now those burdened beasts all gone. For should they not taste freedom once before the burning dawn? Church door too is open, empty pulpit is a cell, and the last old woman standing cannot ring the heavy bell. And from his poet's grave, the prophet marvels at the shame, for the million candles burning, for the help that never came, for the million candles burning. baptized there in blood on the cruel school floor. 19 lambs lay slaughtered with the law outside the door. And in the city named for the reigning queen of heaven, Lot's wife dared glance back while she was still confessing. And as the searing flames rise to the mountains from the sea, another queen is dying in another jubilee. And from his poet's grave, the prophet marvels at the shame. For the million candles burning, for the help that never came. For the million candles burning. Entreaty from the last night of the world, but just a simple why beneath the hateful flags unfurled. For the faithful look to heaven, for thine easy yoke, Rabbani, and a psalm rises like incense. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. And from his poet's grave, the prophet marvels at the shame. For the million candles burning, for the help that never came. For the million candles burning. And Rachel cries to heaven as her little ones proclaim, will you suffer us to come, O Lord? Must you kill the flame? A million candles burning. Must you kill the flame?
For the million candles burning, the poetry of Bob Jensen, the composition and voice of Annie Gallup. You can go to Annie Gallup online and get more information. Annie, I'm going to take you yet to surf at Cow River, because all of a sudden you have a standalone spoken word piece. What was the decision to say, okay, let's remove everything and just do this?
We thought that, and I think it was Bob's idea, that maybe in the course of the album there would be some sort of transitional segues that would be just spoken word, very, very simple. That the surf at Cow River, I played the slide guitar, and most of these songs I spent a lot of time recording. That one, I just played it through once on my slide. I played a harmony line on the slide, and it was done. I didn't even edit. It was that. It just came that clearly, and then I put the actual surf sounds behind that. So that one was really rewarding.
I see them rolling in from that vast and mighty plain, those blue fields of the north where leviathans have lain. And when they make the shallows, they break toward the shore, those foaming white swift stallions upon the tidal bore. They tumble there like August clouds in a windy sky to the unforgiving beachhead like cavalry to die. Their hooves upon the pebbles beneath the crashing waves, their bodies strewn upon the beach, that shallow, frothy grave.
How do you own somebody else's words? Did you have to take an inward journey to say, these are his words, but they are now to be mine? Who am I in this place?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Um, I never, I mean, and this is partly why it's so different from writing my own words. Um, they were always Bob's words to me, and it was always my deep respect for his way with language and his way with the arc of a story and the message that he gives through his poetry. It was always deeply respectful of what he was trying to do and what he was trying to say and how he was trying to say it. And just finding a vehicle to deliver those words. We joke that neither of us is particularly accessible on our own, but when we come together, we create something that is more accessible than either of us has ever done before.
So this program that I do called Folk Roots, Routes, it follows many, many themes. This has allowed me to reach out to the poetry within songs. And did you, in the process of this, come out with more collaborative ideas that you could do? Because, well, I don't know where I'm going with this, because you kind of shocked me with that. Okay, together we make something special. Individually we make something individual. What did you learn from this process? Is this the first time you've actually opened up and allowed somebody into that space?
It is, absolutely. And that was such a surprise to me to be trusted with the music for a project. People always come to me for my words, and I don't really, you know, I don't come up as people's favorite musician, but I do come up as their favorite lyricist. So I was really surprised to be trusted musically, and I felt like I kind of grew into that trust. That I came up with musical ideas in that context that had never occurred to me in another context.
So it's like visiting another country and then coming out with a whole new world perspective, because I do love the recording process. How do you now, in collaboration, release this to the world? World is now yours. How do you do that?
Yeah.
And when do you
well,
know? You as the artist, you as the now says it's done and out there. I know there's a collaboration, but I also know there has to be a time when you can release it from your heart.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because releasing a record into the world really does feel like releasing it from your heart. And we always say that nothing is ever finished, it's just abandoned. And I think there's a moment I yeah, I just know. I guess that's one of those things. You just learn to trust yourself when everything about it feels good. Everything about it feels right. And this project was really interesting to record. I played all the parts on this album with a very few exceptions, and I needed a lot of studio time. We have a studio here in the house because my husband Peter Galway is a producer and a recording engineer, but his studio was busy all the time. So we wound up actually installing a second recording studio in the upstairs of our house. So now I have a recording studio on my computer as well, and I just went into total immersion. I did not emerge for probably a good 6 months. Um, I was just lost in this project. It took over. It had a life of its own, and it took over everything I did and everything I thought. If I woke up in the morning, I was already thinking of the next thing to do. It really was a total immersion experience, and yeah, and I still haven't really come out of it, even though the record has been finished and it's out. I'm still kind of in the mood to keep working on it. So I'm going to have to find a new project to dive into so I can kind of get over grieving this one being finished.
People, two artists, become one to create the song. How do you feel about that now?
I'm really proud of this project. It feels like it has a real synergy of what both of us have to say. You know, all of his poems are and especially all the ones I chose, resonate with me so deeply. I feel like he has shown me something I didn't know I knew, which is a really interesting revelation. And I think he has that effect on a lot of people. Where my poetry shows you a new way of looking at something, he shows you something that you didn't know you knew. It's like a revelation. It's a very aha. It's very exciting. So,
Certainly hear from that. What I heard is, did you hear the red-winged blackbird part 2 somewhere coming up? I thank you very much for spending this time. But this is really caught me. I thank you for that, my friend.
well, thank you for listening. Thank you for hearing what we're doing with this project.
Well, thank you very much, Annie.
One for the morning and one for the night, one for the darkness and one for daylight, one for the price so heavily paid, one for the fortune a better man made, one for the dream whose race has been run, one for the soul who fell into the sun, one for the furrow so earnestly hoed, one for the fork in the loneliest road, one for the lover and one for the friend, one for the enemy, try to pretend. Here's one for the money, one for the debt, and one for the wager you'll always regret. One for the beggar and one for the thief, and one for the clover with one extra leaf. Here's one for the sailor and one for the sea, one for the fella you thought you could be. One. One more for the folly of all of your schemes. Pray that tomorrow is yesterday's dream. One.
Both Annie Gallup and Bob Jensen for sharing this recording. Did you hear the red-winged blackbird? Please seek it out on all streaming services. It's light and strong with messages that are filled with humor and beauty. I highly recommend it.